Thank you for viewing my channel today. I really appreciate this. Old Rev May here. Hope you're doing well. God has been good to me. We both have another day. Let's make it count for something. Today we're going to talk about why should I go to church? Why do I should go to church? A lot of people ask me that all the time. Before we do, if you would hit that red button at the bottom right hand corner, give me a thumbs up. Or at the end you can hit the little round circle with my picture. If you would subscribe, that's the only way I'm going to get this pushed out to other people and reach people for the Lord. Doesn't take but just a few seconds, costs you no money. I don't ask for money on here. And so just here to try to help people. That's all we're trying to do. We're going to talk about why should I go to church. I was reading someone's blog the other day. I don't even remember who it was. I read so much. And a pastor wrote about why many people and children don't go to church anymore. And lots of people commented on it and gave their reasons why they stay home. Some of them said, well, we have a little home meeting once in a while. I don't want to go to a brick and mortar building because I've had my feelings hurt. People did this, people did that. You hear it all the time. Me being a pastor for many, many years, my father was a pastor, my mother, I understand. I've heard all the stories. I don't go to church because they did this. I don't go to church because they did that. I don't go to church. Okay, here's what I'd like to say to people when people would say that to me. All right, do you like everything you hear at work? Does your boss always tell you exactly what you want to hear? Do you ever have anybody at work disagree with you or don't agree with you on everything? But you're still working there. Why? Because you get a paycheck. That's why you're still working there, for the almighty dollar. So you'll put up with that. But at church, if someone does something you don't like or says something you don't like, then you don't want to go to church. I'm not going with those hypocrites no more. Well, I'd rather go to church with them than go to hell with them. You think they're not going to make it. You think they're a hypocrite. So I'm just saying, let's don't do that. What the devil wants to do, and you may not like this, but I'm going to tell you the truth. All right? That's what I do on here. I try to tell the truth of the Lord and of the Bible and give it to you straight. All right? We all have flaws. No one is perfect but Jesus Christ. If any preacher gets up and tells you, I've been 15 years, 25 years, I've never sinned, they're lying. All right? Everybody sins at one time or another. I think it's Ecclesiastes 7:20 or 7:15, somewhere in that range. You can see it. It says nobody grows every day and never sins. Well, if you look at somebody and wish they would just keel over, well, you just killed them. If you look at some woman, or if you're a man and you look at some woman and you lust after her and wish you could be in bed with her, you already did. That's what the Lord said. So saying I've never sinned for 15, 20, 25 years is a ridiculous statement. Not only that, it puts a ridiculous amount of pressure on the people in your church trying to live up to that standard, which they'll never be able to do. And therefore, when they do mess up, they'll feel guilty. I'm not as good as him. They quit coming to church. You can't put that kind of pressure on people. I've got another video about that. I'll try to tag it at the end and put it in the description box. They blame the church a lot, and they don't want to go to church. And they believe that they've been hurt, and there's just a bunch of hypocrites going to church. And so I hear that a lot. What excuse are you using not going to the house of the Lord? What excuse are you using not to serve the Lord? Well, I pray every night before I go to bed. Well, that's good, but are you living the right kind of life? Are you doing everything the Bible tells you to do? If you're not, you need help. What the devil wants to do, he wants to isolate you. If you'll look at one of the animal channels, and if you look at the lions, all right, if you look at the hyenas, what they do is they try to find the one that's limping, or that's young, or it's out by itself all alone away from the herd, and that's when they circle it and attack it and try to devour it, the one that's off by itself. When they come up against the herd, you've seen water buffalo pick them up and throw them up in the air, gore them, run them off, stomp at them, they'll take off. Why? Because a group is a lot stronger than one person. If the devil can isolate you and get you out of church and get you to yourself, he's got you. And he's going to nip and chew and nip and chew and rip on you till he devours you. He's like a roaring lion. Never said he is. He's like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. It's a lot easier to devour somebody when they're by themselves than with other people. All right? Sorry about that. Hebrews 10:25 says, "Let us not give up meeting together, as some are in the habit of doing, but let us encourage one another, and all the more as we see the day approaching." Do you believe the Lord's closer to coming back today than he was 10 years ago? Do you believe the Lord's closer to coming back than he was 5 years ago? All right, as you see the day approaching to you, you should go even more and go to the house of the Lord. Let's look at the church building, all right? We'll talk about the church building. The church is where you see your church family, all right? Now, a lot of people say, I don't like a brick and mortar building. I think it's a waste of money. It's a waste of time and all that. Well, let's look at what most churches and churches that are really doing things like they should are doing. The church is where you see your church family. It's where you have weddings. You have baptisms. You dedicate your children back to the Lord. It's also a place to have funerals or a celebration of life, and you go to the church house. I don't want a funeral home service. If they have a service for me when I'm gone, I want it done at the church. That's my life. That's where I go and talk to the Lord a lot. Sure, I talk to him in the truck. I talk to him out in the back field down by the creek. I talk to him in this room here, my office, where I pray and study. But I also go to the house of the Lord. There's something about the house of the Lord that feels special to me. I go to church early sometimes and kneel down in my seat and pray and talk to the Lord before the service to get my mind on God, so I can get something out of the sermon, get something out of the praise and worship that can lift me up and help me. The church is where you do all these things: weddings, baptisms, baby dedications, and it's also a place to have a celebration of people's lives when they pass on. Church is where you get counseling from your pastor. He meets you at the church and counsels you. All right? You use the dining hall at the church. Most churches have a dining hall. They use them for baby showers, wedding showers, birthday parties, wedding anniversaries. On graduations, can we use the church dining hall so they don't have to go out and rent a hall? They got too many relatives and all that. The church is a meeting place, and it should be used for the church family so the church family can do what they need to do to celebrate other people's lives in their families. And that it should be a place where people feel safe to go and to worship and to celebrate and to have parties and etc. That's what it should be to the church people, a good place to go. Now, the way my church always did it, I did it like my dad did it. So I'm just telling you, if you were a church member, you paid nothing. If you wanted to get married or your kids or grandkids wanted to get married, wedding's free. They want to have it at the church, it's free. All right, they want to use the dining hall, it's free. All right. If you don't go to the church and you're not a member, you want to use the dining hall, then we charged a fee, because we found this in the past, they would trash it, leave stuff behind, and then our people that clean the church would have to go in there and do a lot of extra work. So we started telling them, if you're not a member of the church, you have to pay for the dining hall. If they called me and wanted me to go to a rehearsal on Friday night, and I had to dress up and go to a rehearsal and have a rehearsal for an hour and a half or 2 hours, then do a wedding at my church the next day, and open up early to, if it's summertime, get the air conditioning going. If it's wintertime, get the heat going and all that. Then I charged a fee. All right? It wasn't exorbitant. It was usually around $100. But I've listened to, I'll just say this and I'll move on with this. I listened to a man who was at his daughter's wedding stand beside me and talk to me and said, see that guy, that woman doing the balloons and putting those arrangements on all the tables? I said, yeah. And he said, see how she's putting some streamers and this around? I said, uh-huh. He goes, I had to pay her $750 to do that. My daughter wanted the tables decorated, $750. Then they brought the wedding cake in. And I don't remember exactly, but it was something like $1,000, $800. for this wedding cake, is what he told me. And he goes, you know what this meal's costing me? I said, no, sir, I don't. And he says, these meals are going to cost me over $4,500. Then he said he paid the DJ $750 that's waiting at the hall they rented. Then he had to pay $500 to rent the hall, and him to spend, I don't know, records or maybe, I don't know how he did it. But anyway, I went to the hall because they wanted me to hang around and get pictures taken. They like to have a picture of the pastor. He's the guy that married us, not because you're famous or they like you or whatever, but most of them want a picture of who married them, and you're up there when they take the pictures anyway. And he said, I had to pay that photographer. Now, I know a lot of people don't use them no more, but they still use them at weddings. I married several people last year, too, that still have a professional photographer. He goes, that photographer is going to cost me over $1,000. Anyway, he told me the wedding was costing him $11,800. He goes, but I'm glad to do it. She's my only daughter and blah, blah, blah. And then he started hammering on again. Oh, when it was all over, they gave me an envelope. I put it in my pocket, thought no more about it. When I got home that night, after I ate supper, I was thinking, oh, I better get that out of the closet. I forgot about it. When I opened it up, it was just a thank you card, nothing. No money, nothing. I went to a rehearsal, spent almost 2 hours, married them, stood around, got pictures taken, helped them out, was there another 2 or 3 hours. And a lady that did the balloons and the little decorations got $750, and the DJ got $750, and I got nothing. That happened many times. So I started telling people that I wasn't in it for the money. But the Bible says a workman's worthy of his hire. If you're going to pay somebody $750 to spend records, you could give $100 to the minister who's doing the service, all right? And I know people get offended at that, but that's what I did because I felt like the Bible says a workman's worthy of his hire, and you go through a lot like I just did with them, and then you get a thank you card with nothing in it. Sometimes I get a thank you card with a $10 bill in it. But when I started telling them, if you're not a church member, and we had some people who were from out of state that was at the military base, and they wanted to use the church and the dining hall, wanted me to marry them and all this, and it was going to be a big wedding. They had over 220 people show up. They told me they were going to have 50 to 60. But anyway, I did that. I told them you have to pay the church $150 to use a dining hall. That's so we can clean up after you're gone. And then they always, when they get out in the parking lot, they got to throw bird seed or rice. Not too many of them use rice anymore. It's supposed to kill the birds or something. But they throw it all over, and all that has to be swept up, or it'll be drug into the church. And then you have to go in and clean the dining hall and all that. So I told them, this is what it'll cost you. They said, no problem, because they were not members. But if you're a member of a church, they take care of you. That's what it should be. That's what the pastor does. Don't neglect going and worship in the house of the Lord, and sharing your faith will strengthen you and will strengthen each other's. Iron sharpens iron. You grow by helping each other. This is how we grow in the Lord as we see this day approaching. Having hard times and trouble in your life is not the time to pull back from going to church. It's not the time to quit on God, all right? Life, no matter who you are, college educated, high school educated, dropout, all right? It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what status you're from. We all have happy days. We all have sad days. We all have days where maybe you cry. You have days where you laugh. There's good times, there's bad. That's what life's all about. But you have to learn to live through all those times. The church building, let's talk about the building itself. The church building should be nice. I believe that. But it does not have to have marble sinks, gold faucets, marble or the fancy tile in the vestibule when you go in, and have marble pillars and all that stuff. If you're in a town of 10,000 people, mostly ordinary middle class working hard people, along with poor people, all right, you should not put all your money, spend $10 million building a church. You don't need a church that fancy, all right? Have a nice church. It's nice, it's clean, it's solid, a good place to worship, but invest your money into your people, not into the building, all right? You'll have to upkeep the building as you go along. We never got done. As soon as one year I sealed the lot and restriped it and put some signs up. The next year we put a privacy fence up, and we put a new furnace in. Then the next year we put central air in. Then we put curb and guttering for a solid block around the church. We paid half, the city paid half. We did that. We were constantly doing things. I expanded the platform. It wasn't big enough. Had it built up, put new carpet in, put tile in the back. The people seen their money being used for their benefit, not for mine. All right? I still drove a pickup truck. I still wore ordinary suits and all that. I didn't, we put our money back into the people. The church leaders should not build a church where every penny has to pay the loan payment because they're so far in debt, and then they have to harp at people, pass out envelopes, and beg them to give extra so they can meet the obligation. You don't need a church building that's so expensive it hammers your people really hard. That should not be a worry. They should come to church and worship the Lord, not worry about how they're going to make the loan payment. It's a place where worshipers spend their time with their brothers and sisters, and they get to know each other really good. Now, I'm going to winding this up here in just a second. I'm going to talk about a benevolent fund. A benevolent fund, well-meaning, kindly, a good thing to do. I always in my church had a benevolent fund. Now you say, what do you mean? Well, I had a benevolent fund, and I tried to keep a certain amount of money in it. And what I did was, if somebody in the church, and I'll give you a quick, I'm not bragging on me, I'm just telling you what we did, all right? We had a guy in the church who was a hard worker. He was an usher. His wife led praise and worship for about a year and was a Sunday school teacher. And they got saved in our church. They gave their heart to the Lord. And anyways, they got in a car wreck and they were having a hard time. The other guy didn't have a lot of insurance, and they kept dodging and ducking him. And he had no way to get around. He couldn't get to work. He was having to pay a guy at work to come and pick him up, and they could barely make ends meet. So I called him in my office and I said, "What's up?" Now, we're talking years ago. Please understand. He said, "Pastor May, I found a car that'll work perfect for us, and I can get it for $750, but I don't have the $750. Till that insurance company pays me, I've been calling sister so-and-so and brother so-and-so to bring me to church because we live so far from the church. It's hard to walk, especially when it's 90 degrees out. It was summertime when this happened." And I said, "Sit tight." I went out and got the church treasurer. I said, "Cut so-and-so a check for $750, put on the memo for car." She said, "Okay." She came in and gave it to me. He goes, "What's this?" I said, "Go get the car. You got a way to get around, and then when you settle up with them, you'll be okay. You don't have to worry about that now. Just go get the car." Of course, they thanked me and thanked me. Well, what they did was, I didn't know. I didn't ask them. I didn't tell them it was a loan. They gave the money back to the church when they got their settlement. They wound up giving them $1,050 or $1,100, something like that, for their car that got totaled. And then they gave them like $2,500 or $3,500 for their pain and suffering or whatever. And so they came back and gave the money back to the church. And I said, "You don't have to do it. It's not a loan." They said, "No, Brother May, you can help other people. If we all get help, then when we get on our feet, we put back in, we can help others." Wished everybody saw it that way. Most of the people did. I had a woman come to me one time. She said, "Brother May, my daughter doesn't go to church here. She's an adult." I said, "I understand." She was in bad shape. She'd had a car accident. Anyway, after the car accident, she couldn't see good. She needed glasses. And she goes, "They're $300, and I don't have it, and I want to try to help my daughter out. I've got 100, but I can maybe come up with another 50 in 2 weeks." And I said, her and her husband were retired on fixed income. I said, "You just sit here when I got that church treasurer, cut him a check for $300. I asked her what place it was. She told me. I said, "Make the check out to them," and she did. I brought it back and gave it to her. She started crying. She said, "Brother Man," I said, "Look, she's your daughter. You're a faithful member. You put money in this church for years. You're a faithful member. Don't worry about that. Go take care of your daughter. Get her glasses." All right? And then another time, I'm not bragging on myself. I'm trying to show you how the benevolent fund works. All right? When I was on my way to work in the wintertime, and I saw 4 or 5 of our church children standing on the corner waiting for a school bus. And I was supposed to be up in Kansas City buying cars in about an hour and 20 minutes. And it was going to take me about an hour to get there. I was already running a little behind. I like to get there early and check everything over. I was running a car, manager of a car dealership. And that's how I made my living, bivocational pastor. Some drive a church bus, some are carpenters. I was a manager in the car business, GM and a GSM and a business manager, and a used car manager, new car manager, the whole thing, manager top to bottom. And so I was on my way, and I saw those kids standing out there, all huddled up together, with other kids around them wearing coats, hoods, gloves. None of those kids had gloves. None of them had a coat. They were all wearing thin sweaters and all that. They had no hat on their head, and they were frozen. I got right on my cell phone in the car and called my church treasurer. I told her what I saw. She says, "What do you want me to do?" I said, "You get together with my wife, and I don't care how you do it. Get all those kids a coat, a hat, and gloves right away. I don't want to see them standing out there like that no more." Well, when some of the ladies at church found out I did, they threw a big fit. They came to me and put their finger at my face and got real mad because I helped. Well, the kids went to our church. So did their mother. The father didn't. And they said, "Why did you do that? That church." I said, "Listen, those kids go to this church. Do you think God would be pleased if I drove right by them and saw them in need and did nothing for them? If they were your children or grandchildren, would you be different than what you are right now?" And they kind of looked down and this and that. I said, "Shame on you." I said, "I'm going to tell you something right now. I got a benevolent fund, and I take care of the people in this church as much as I can, the best I can." And I said, "I'm not going to quit doing it. And when I see children not having a winter coat or a hat or gloves, I'm going to buy it for them. If you got a problem with that, you take it up with the Lord. I'm not going to do anything different. I help everyone in the church that needs help." And they all walked out quietly. They should have been ashamed of themselves. Those children needed something, and we helped them. So that's what I did with my benevolent fund. I had another guy get hurt on the job, and they paid him 2/3 of his pay, but the first 6 weeks they didn't pay him anything. And they were running out of groceries, and they were running out of gas in their car, and his wife worked part-time. She kept asking him to put her on full-time while he was at home recuperating. Got hurt real bad on the job. We knew eventually they'd get a settlement. We knew eventually they would get their 2/3 paid to them, but right then they needed help. We took care of it. Why? That's what the benevolent fund's for. I could tell you story after story. Churches ought to help their people. Why? Let's look at Galatians 6 and 10. "Therefore, as we have an opportunity, let us do good to all, especially to those in the household of faith." What does that say? Therefore, as we have opportunity, let us do good to all. That's everybody, folks. All. Includes you. Especially to those who are in the household of faith. Especially those. So there's no excuse not to help people. You say, well, people take advantage. I know they do. All right? We had a place here in town, they still have it, that feeds hungry people. They feed them and they give groceries out. They serve meals and all that. We donated every month to that. So when somebody came to the church and said, "I don't have enough food," I could say, "Go to here and there. We donate money every month and they'll take care of you." I didn't use the benevolent fund for that. The benevolent fund was for the people in the church to take care of those in the household of faith. You say that's terrible. Well, I'll give you one real quick example of that. I had a guy show up at the church. This happened many times. This one. My usher stuck his head in the door. He said, "Pastor, I know you don't like to be bothered before church. You're studying and listening to the Lord." He goes, "I got a guy out here insisting talking to you." And he just barged right past him and came in. Reeked the cigarettes really bad. Must have just smoked it right up to the door. And I said, "What can I do for you?" Stood up. He started blabbling. "I need money and blah, blah, blah." I said, Hold on a minute. He said, "What?" I said, "What's your name?" "What difference does that make?" I said, "Makes a whole lot. If you're not going to be mannerly and you don't want to tell me who you are, I'm not going to be much inclined to listen to what you got to say." All right, so he leaned right over my desk and started talking real loud, telling me he needed money. I said, "Hey, back up, sit down. What is your name?" He told me. I told him my name, shook his hand, and he proceeded to tell me he didn't have enough food. They were out of gasoline. He needed to do this and that. And he wanted to know if I'd give him some cash. And right away, the Spirit in my heart spoke to me like it always did. I told him, I said, we don't give out cash. All right, we don't give cash to people we don't know. I said, we help. And I told him to 2 places. We already been to both those places. Now, whether he had or not, I don't know. But he said, we've been to those 2 places. I need some money. And he kept asking for $250. And I said, we don't do that. I said, I'm sorry. And he said, well, we don't have any food to eat. I said, here's what I'll do for you. Is your family sick? How many children do you have? I got 3 children and my wife. Are they sick? No. How far do you live from here? About 7 or 8 blocks. I go, okay. Church don't start for 15 minutes. No, church don't start for 25 minutes. I said, so go home, get your family, bring them back, worship with my church family. At the end of the service, I won't tell them who it is. I'll announce we have a family in need. I'll put a plate up there. Ask them whatever you feel you could give or you want to give. Drop it in the plate, and I'll see that they get it. I'm not going to give you the money. I'll count it in front of you. I'll take you to the grocery store and buy you groceries. I'll go to the gas station, and I'll put some gas in your car. I don't know if we get enough where we can fill it or whatever, but I'll do that. He goes, what are you talking about? I said, if you want my people to reach in their pockets and help you out, and you're not a member of the church, you've never been here before, just go home and get your family, bring them back, worship with us. So if you worship with us and you come, all right, then we'll break bread with you afterwards, and I'll help you out. I'll do something we don't normally do. I'll receive an offering, and then I'll help you out. You won't give me the money? I go, no, I'm not going to give you the money. And he goes, so he said a curse word and started sticking his finger in my face. And that's when my usher came in and another one. I said, that's okay. I said, sir, you're leaving right now. All right? Out you go. You got to go. Then he started to cuss me again. I said, look, sir, you got to get out of here. If you don't, today's going to be the day you're going to be in jail. All right, you need to leave. I'm not going to take this. Out. And he left. All right? 2 days later, I'm on my way to an auction to buy cars. And I stop at the gas station. I have to go inside and sign the ticket. Company account, all my gas was provided. I just had to fill it and go inside. I went up to open the door, and when I did, a guy walked right out and bumped into me. He goes, oh, excuse me. He looked up, had a case of beer under one arm, 2 cartons of cigarettes in this mitt here, and one hanging out of his mouth, standing right there, and his eyes did this. I said, oh, I see you got the milk and bread for your kids to feed your children. I kid you not. There was 3 steps. He hopped down them and took across that lot like a scalded dog and ran like 100 miles an hour. When I went in there, the guy that ran the place, of course, he'd been there a long time. He knew me. I preached his dad's funeral, etc. And he goes, what'd you say to that guy? I said, he came to my church and asked me to help him with food and gasoline. And I told him that I would help him if he came to church, and he wouldn't do it. And I said, then here he is with a case of beer under one arm and 2 cartons of cigarettes in the other hand. He goes, that guy is always, and he started telling me about him. So that's why pastors have to be wise as a serpent and harmless as a dove. But we need to realize that the opportunities we have to help our own people, this passage emphasizes the importance of helping fellow believers within our church family. They are part of our church community. Let's read the verse one more time and I close. Galatians 6:10. Therefore, as we have an opportunity, let us do good to all, especially those of the household of faith. I would much rather invest my money in the people that are my members than into a building. I want a nice building. I want a good place to worship. I gave you all the reasons why we do worship together and why you shouldn't be isolated. You're going to be easy target. But also we should help those in the household of faith. I would never attend a church that would turn their back on people in the church who need help. And I'm not talking about people that are mooches. Every place got mooches. In the car business, we call them a mooch. So people that want something for nothing. People that are able to work and won't work. I'm not talking about them. The Bible deals with that. That's another video, all right, on helping people that are able to work. The Lord said if you're able to work and you don't get to eat. You don't get food. So I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about people that are members of your church who are good, who maybe has a car wreck, who maybe gets hurt on the job. something unusual happens. They just need help to get them over the hump. And I'm going to tell you, 99% of the people I helped gave back that amount I gave them back to the fund without being asked, without it being told it was a loan. Never told none of them it's a loan. All right? And they gave back. So that fund stayed up there pretty good, and we was able to turn those money and turn that money and help the people in our church. They knew that we cared more than just saying we're going to pray for them. All right? We did more than that. And churches should not put so much money into fancy stuff on their building, but invest in your people. I know a lot of people won't agree with that. I'm sorry. If you don't, that's fine. But this verse I've always loved, especially those in the household of faith. Take care of your own people first. Do something for them. But every month we donated to the community so food could be given and food could be served to the community. We donated money every month for that. But the benevolent fund was for the church members so I could help them over the hump and help them get past stuff. And that's what it was for. God loves you. I love you. This is a long post. Probably one of the longest ones I ever did. Hopefully you watched it till the end. Thank you for your time this time. Till next time. So long, Pastor Mary saying goodbye. God loves you, and so do I.